Hello, diary listeners. This week, I'm very excited to introduce to you all my good friend John Simmonds of Eden Health. He's my acupuncturist and an incredible human. This is actually going to be a 2-week spotlight on him, and this is the first part, which we are calling Upstream. Upstream will be part 1 of my time with John Simmonds. Enjoy, listeners. Welcome to the Apprenticeship Diaries, where raw meets refined.
Let's be real, we're still working on refining.
What it took, what it takes, and the stories that are made.
Join us as we learn from professionals about how their stories begin.
Do it. Yeah. Yeah. Do it again.
Boo, 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 boo. Right.
Piper picked.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
I know we did that whole extensive sound check, but I do have to warn people moving ahead as they listen to this podcast. I did this for the first time in a long time on site at John's place. And we tried to control the environment about as much as we could, but the air kept kicking on. So when that happens, you're going to hear this sound in the background. And I do apologize that the audio of this podcast isn't the greatest, but hopefully if you followed this podcast this long, it won't bother you that much at all. Again, enjoy, listeners. Hello, diary listeners. I'm here today with my good friend and acupuncturist, John Simmonds, and he actually owns and operates EdenHealthMD.com, and that's his own business where you basically do all manner of things, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Do you want to extend on that? I mean, I do a little bit of a commercial for you, but...
No, it's... Basically, it's holistic health. I work with a lady called Charlotte who's absolutely amazing. She does massage, she does lymphatic drainage, post-op care, and all that sort of thing. Her husband, Ali, is also amazing, and he does Thai massage. He does pressure point therapy, all this sort of thing. I do acupuncture, infrared therapy, microneedling for acne, hair loss, rejuvenation, and removal of scars. So it's multifaceted, and we pretty much handle everything that you can throw at us. And a lot of people come at the end of their search for the ultimate therapy, and of course they go backwards on a timeline. Instead of starting at the one that's been around longest, they start at the one that's been around the shortest amount of time, and so we end up unscrewing a lot of people's problems. So
it's always been my experience.
That's how it works.
And where are you located, just so everyone knows?
Yeah, we're in Cockeysville on Scott Adam Road.
Okay, wonderful. Cockeysville, Maryland. And it's a cute little place.
Yeah, it smells nice. People come in, they go, ooh, it smells really wholesome, which it does.
Yep. And I've known you since jiu-jitsu, which was a few years ago. And,
oh my goodness, that's ancient history really, isn't it?
I mean, unfortunately, I'm sad.
Yeah. So
sad
that was 8 years ago.
Yeah, but people were raving about you even then, because Ryan at Ground Control, he was like, "Oh man, if you want some epic healing, go to John."
Well, that's very kind of him to say so.
Well, it was true. I mean, here I am. And the thing that drew me to you is that, like you had started out saying, most people start with the shortest amount of time of like conception of our idea of health instead of the oldest.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the beauty industry, but more than that, my dad got into medicine and or holistic healing, massage rather, not medicine, but for his own health and well-being. Always an athlete, and the second oldest profession in the world is barbering, like, giving haircuts and managing basic hygiene. So I think from there it just kind of started his path during it, and I grew up around it. So I was just like I had no idea how unique my upbringing was as a product of growing up around all of that. I thought that this is what people knew.
Yeah.
And it kind of amazes me sometimes how people need to be sold on the more holistic route.
It's crazy. I mean, it's shocking. The thing is, the analogy that I always give is, do you remember the pet rock? People go, oh, yeah. Well, if they're, old enough, they do, from the 90s or whatnot. And I go, well, is it still around? No. Well, there you go. That's testimony to the fact that if something doesn't work, it doesn't stick around. So there's, arguments about how old acupuncture is, but 2,000 to 4,000 years, and you've probably hit it roughly on the head.
Yeah.
And then, people don't seem to remember that modern medicine was forged on the battlefield. So think about the Napoleonic Wars, people hit with grape shot, getting their legs sawn off and cauterized. That's where the old term sawbones comes from. Mm-hmm. And, they give you maybe a shot of rum and a twig to chew on. And the people that hold you down, well, they just went at you with a handsaw. Cauterize the wound, carbolic acid, if there was any around, burn the stump, stop the bleeding, and there you go.
And it got even more like brutal, I think, before it got better too, because then it went into like those theaters, right? Like where they were just totally experimenting.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that there was a TV show set in turn of the century New York with Clive Owen?
Yes.
And
what was it called?
It was amazing, though.
It was amazing.
And then that was back in the day, which modern medicine seems to conveniently forget. Everybody was on heroin and cocaine because it's good for you.
Yes. Well, it helps numb you.
Right, but I mean, I think they weren't using it for that purpose. Anyway, so no. Clive Owen, who I really like, Clive Owen, you can always tell Clive Owen because he speaks a little bit like this. And they said he was going to be a James Bond, but I think that was just a career boost for him. I don't think he was ever in the running. But talking about James Bond, who's your favourite James Bond?
Oh, I like it's hard, man, because I really do, the OG, his name escapes.
Sean Connery?
Yes, I do love him. But I kind of like the more modern guy the best, honestly.
Timothy?
I don't know his name.
Timothy Dalton.
But he was in a version of Mal Flanders.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of fell in love with him there because he was ultimately the guy that she fell in love with because he was just as much of a swindler as her.
Right.
And he just had this, I don't know, he looks like a kind of guy who gets hit in the face, whereas Sean Connery does not.
Yeah, he looks like the guy who does the hitting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And,
well, let me digress just another time. Did you ever see that interview that he did with Barbara Walters where he talks about slapping his girlfriends?
No.
No, okay, you got to look at that. It's on YouTube, and there's Barbara Walters trying to shame him. And so basically saying, well, don't you think that this is wrong? And he says, no, I don't think it is. And she says, well, why is that? And he says, well, sometimes you have a discussion and they want to be right and you let them be right and then they want to be right again. But if you look at it, it's like 2 minutes and it's classic. It's definitely not aged well. Not that it ever aged well at all, even back when it was originally recorded. But Sean Connery, I don't know.
It's still accurate. I mean, Rico still sends me memes to this day or videos where just it's basically just tolerating how much I want to be right. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. I'm glad. Because he'd kill me. Like a slap from him would not go over well. And then he would be right, but we would not be together.
No, and plus he'd be in prison.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You might get one from me where no one goes to jail, but we won't be together anymore.
Yeah. Well, we don't want Rico getting out of control and not having the opportunity to benefit from this wonderful relationship. He's a wonderful guy, Rico.
He is, but he is kind of old school with that man. But I mean, he doesn't act on any of it. But if you were to let the internal dialogue, it would be very Sean Connery-esque. I'm sure. Just let it go.
So going back to the original point, so Clive Owen was in this series about the evolution of medicine. It was in New York City, and there was a particular hospital, and
I'm gonna look it up while you're talking about it.
And so he was experimenting with the surgery, and he decided that what he was going to do was use himself as the model. So he was sitting on the examination table, or the operating table, I should probably say, and he gave himself some opium to numb the pain, which is obviously not a good idea if you're operating on yourself. And I won't spoil it, but you can imagine where it goes with that.
The Nick.
The Nick.
That's what it was.
Was it St Nicholls Hospital or something like that?
Yeah. K-N-I-C-K. The Nick. It was really good.
Oh, the Knickerbocker.
The Nick, yes. And it was kind of interesting back in that time, which I didn't realize this, but back at that time, the ambulances were their own independent thing too. They weren't actually hired or utilized through the hospital, so it was very competitive to be an ambulance driver.
Oh, okay.
And that was also like a side thing that people don't realize about our modern medical system, is that it wasn't as all like, you had people that would like rush in and there would be this competition to get somebody to the hospital, and how nefarious that could get.
So how, in the same way that attorneys are often referred to as ambulance chasers, the ambulance people were operating on information for which they would pay, so they could pick up bodies. Well, there's one of the ambulance drivers is this character who's really enjoyable to watch. Is big bearded Irishman, I believe, and his part expands throughout the show. But you can tell that people liked him, so they brought him back.
Yes. Yeah, and of course there was a whole component that was very real too about race and people of different races getting into physician work, and it was all separate. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that goes back to let's flash forward to Vivian Thomas. Mm-hmm. So Vivian Thomas worked under Blakelock, I believe it was, and so Blakelock was a hospital at he was a physician at Johns Hopkins when he was Presbyterian. I don't know if you've ever been in there, but if you go downtown, you go to the entrance to the main hospital. There's a big statue of Jesus. It's about 14 feet high, made of marble. And that was from the original days. So Johns Hopkins was a tremendously devout Presbyterian. And, it is upon his laurels that the currently somewhat floundering institution barely remains afloat as of this day. But... so Blakelock, I believe his name was Blakelock, and there's a TV show with Kieran Hines, I think his name is. But anyway,
right.
You could look it up. And Vivian Thomas was African American who was tremendously gifted, and he became legitimized through this very highly reputable physician, and he became his advisor whilst he was doing surgery. So it's funny actually, because my kid's grandfather worked with him and I believe met them both.
Really?
Yeah. So he's like the Forrest Gump of Baltimore medicine.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. A dramatization of the relationship between heart surgery pioneers Alfred Blaylock. Blaylock?
Yeah.
Okay. And Vivian Thomas, a dramatization of the relationship between heart surgery pioneers. Something the Lord Made.
Yes. So
TV movie.
That's
really cool.
No, you've got to watch it. I mean, you don't have to do anything, of course, but I highly recommend that you watch it, because not only does it have a lot of history about Baltimore, but it's also the first significant integration of African Americans into the predominantly white Christian medical system.
Very cool.
It was really enjoyable to watch, entertaining, and also get a little bit of history under your belt to sort of counter the nonsense that we're exposed to all day, every day with social media and whatnot. But So Blaylock, I think, actually died of bladder cancer. So
Bummer.
yeah, my kid's grandfather, I think, operated on him. He was a smoker as well. Here you go. Here's another thing. Smoking people associate with lung cancer, but it's primarily associated with bladder cancer.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a nugget of information.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
So,
I find like the knockout is when you combine smoking with drinking.
well, there's Eddie Van Halen syndrome, right?
Yeah.
So you get the constant dryness and heat, which is exacerbated by the alcohol, and it causes metaplasia and then dysplasia. So the cells start to malform, and that's when you get cancer.
Aberration.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I mean, that's if you think about it, it's a horrible thing that Eddie Van Halen died when he did, because he's such a massive contributor to modern rock music. But it's like every time you watch a video with him, he's smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
And you can also see, I think he got sober about 10 or 12 years before he passed away.
Uh-huh.
And then you can see that before he got sober, his teeth were brown, and then they were white. So he went and got his teeth fixed.
Yep.
Because
Well,
I guess,
at least he had nice teeth at the end.
yeah, that's good. And his haircut was a little bit more realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, still rocking to him to this day. I mean, as long as you burn that candle very bright.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Well, I saw a friend the other day, and he was telling me about, there's a book called Eruption, which is a visual documentary of Eddie Van Halen. Was it made by two fans, or I think I'm conflating a documentary as well. But anyway, so the book Eruption, I've yet to check it out. I couldn't find it anywhere, just on a cursory look on the internet. But if you like Eddie Van Halen, I hear that's a really good one.
Very, very.
By the way, here you go. I saw John. What's the name of the guy who used to do was it the Today Show?
Oh, John Oliver?
No. He's a Jewish guy, very centrist and sort of anti.
John Mayer?
No.
No.
He
I'm thinking
did.
of Bill Mayer.
He did a talk show. He's a comedian as well.
Yes. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I can see his face. I can't think of his name.
Daily Show.
But anyway, he was doing.
I'm useless for names today.
Yeah. I'm not doing too well myself.
You're doing great.
No, I don't think
actually.
so. Thank you.
You've already you've already quoted a few things that
So,
we had to look up.
John something.
John of the Daily Show.
Was it the Daily? It might not have been the Daily Show though. But anyway, he was doing something with Dave Chappelle. He did a presentation. I think Dave Chappelle got an award, and he was doing the presenting of it. And he was there.
Stewart.
There you go, John Stewart.
Why didn't I get that?
Love that
It's
guy.
Two names, yeah.
And so he's on stage, and obviously he'd been out of circulation for a bit, because I think he stepped down because he wasn't towing the party line with Hollywood and whatnot, because he didn't have, I don't think he was necessarily supporting the views that were required of him. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so he's on stage and he says, "Yeah, I know you've not seen me for a while, and yes, I know I'm Jewish. We age like avocados." So I laughed at that, and I thought, hey, David Lee Roth aged like an avocado too. He looks like one of the Skeksis from the Crystal Maze.
Yes. Another one that not a lot of people, I guess Dark Crystal's a little bit more.
Oh, is it Dark Crystal?
Dark Crystal.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes, the Skeksis. Not a lot of people have seen that too. Hopefully they have, because, they did that whole Netflix spin-off thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I wanted to touch on it because I know that your work deals a lot with different types of, it's old. So, one of the things that we focused on when I was tattooing you was elemental type stuff, Chinese elements, and you mentioned heat when smoking. Is that part of that older, like the rumors and things like that? I remember at least in, I know this is Chinese and I'm definitely conflating them, but I know in medieval times they had a concept of things where, there's too much heat, or there's too much blood, or there's too much,
Yeah, that comes from the Greek. So basically, here you go. This is a funny thing also I learned from my kid's grandfather. He's tremendously encyclopedic knowledge. And sometimes I'll call him up, just ask him a question, and I'll be there for yeah, I got to go. It's 10, 15 minutes later. One of the things was about Werner von Braun. I'll tell you about that in a minute. He learned Latin when he was growing up. He's from Germany, and he came to the United States in 1954. He was the first exchange student at Johns Hopkins that they permitted in their, I guess it was a fellowship program, and he became a urological surgeon. And he was kind of mad because he'd wasted his time learning Latin, but Greek is the language of medicine. So Hippocrates, Hippocratic Oath, all that sort of thing. So they talk about the humors, and these.
That's what it was, the humors.
Yeah, yeah. Humors. So these are, I guess, you have an equivalent in Chinese medicine, and these are, I guess you could say, variations on the elements associated with the organs. Now that seems like a little bit of a brainful to digest, but let me explain. So in Chinese medicine, you've got 5 major yin organs, yin and yang. You know the taiji, it's the circle with the black 6 with the white dot in the middle and the white 6 with the black dot in the middle. Well, that has a philosophy unto itself, which you could, read about ad nauseum. There's whole books written about it. But there are, you've got the yin and the yang. So the yin you think of as female, it's dark, damp, low, quiet. Think of somebody curling up in a ball because they don't have any energy. And then you think of yang, which is like my son. He's a 7-year-old boy. He won't shut up. He's got loads of energy, and he just has to jump off everything and shout a lot. So there's your yin and there's your yang. So my daughter is more the yin type, and I'm more of a yin type. So it's not directly correlative to your gender. But there's one thing here, and I'll just digress once again. But yang energy is supposed to be, well, it's something that we need to get up and go. So I had a teacher at grad school doing acupuncture, and we used to call coffee a chi tonic.
Okay.
So it's not technically a chi tonic because it's ergogenic, which means it stimulates your adrenals and gets you up and going.
Gotcha.
So chi tonic is going to be more regulated and adaptogenic, meaning that if you're up, it'll bring you down a little bit, and if you're down, it'll bring you up a little bit.
Gotcha.
So it's not only you have too much coffee and you get burned out. So you've got dehydration, you've got adrenal fatigue, and all that sort of thing. But with chi tonics, they nourish and regulate, so it's an ongoing thing. The ginseng's a popular chi tonic, and the one that we typically have these days. You've got American ginseng, Shi Yang Shen, and then you've got Korean Panax ginseng. So the American one, it's kind of weak, but it's more neutral, and the Korean one is very hot. So neither of them are really that good because you've got to take a bunch of the American one to get an effect, and the Korean one, it gets too hot. And we're in a society which is already too overstimulated, so you want to stay away from that one. Or the good ginseng, which is Runshen, is from China, but they've gobbled it all up and it's gone. It takes like 20 years for the root to mature.
Wow.
So, when you go into the gas station and it says ginseng, don't bother. Yeah, but they have it right by the counter.
Isn't that always the way?
Yeah. So anyway, going back to the yin and the yang organs, you've got lung, heart, spleen, liver, kidneys. So the lung, obviously, is for respiration. Heart, pumping the blood. Spleen is digestion, and the Western anatomical or physiological function is it stores the white blood cells for autoimmune response. Liver, which is it helps to cleanse your system and filter, and your kidney, which is the keystone of the endocrine system, and it's all about diuresis, urinating, and all this sort of thing. So each of these, going back to the humors, remember the Greeks, each of these has a spirit, and so these correspond to the Greek humors. So the lung has the po. So if we're sad and upset, we have an excess of po. This is mournfulness and grief. So when we're grieving, we're low on energy because you're lung and your spleen combine functions to give you maximize your energy, and this is what ginseng, the old kind that you can't get anymore, goes straight to these two channels, because you've got organs and each organ has a channel associated with it. I'm not going to get too complicated, but so the heart spirit is called the Shen. So if you're agitated or you're anxious, it's because you've got an imbalance of Shen. When people say your Shen disturbed, it usually alludes to mental illness, or there's, let's say, a mental pathology or an imbalance in your mood associated with your consciousness. So there's the split. Here you go. Here's a great tattoo analogy as well. So you did a beautiful koi on my right elbow, and because I can't hardly see it because it's on the back of my arm, but I love it, and I look in the mirror, I say, oh, there it is. And when people, oh, I love your tattoos, I go, well, this is Amy. Amy did this, and it's so amazing because you've got the light through the water, and you've got the dots and the spots of orange and red on the scales. But that is the symbol for Zhi. Zhi is endurance. And there's a story behind that. And Zhi is the spirit of the kidney. So when your kidneys are in good shape, you can go the extra mile. You can do the David Goggins. So his kidneys are probably world-class kidneys.
Wow.
But you also have to understand that all of these stem from the Shen, which is the heart. And his whole thing is that, you have to use mental toughness to force your body to break through the 40% where most people tap out. So the story of the koi is that in Japan, or I guess it would be China even, they have to go upriver to spawn. And in I think it's the Yangtze or the Yellow River, they have to go through this rocky area beyond which are the spawning grounds, and this is called the Dragon's Gate. And so they have to keep jumping and jumping and jumping, and because they're not going to spawn and procreate, which is basically their life's objective, until they get over the Dragon's Gate. And the story is that once they do get over the Dragon's Gate, they become a dragon, which is an angel.
Gotcha.
So a metaphysical manifestation. And so the point is that these days life is very challenging for a lot of people. There's a lot of nonsense going on, and it's almost overwhelming at times. So what we have to do is look inward, focus, and just keep moving forward, even if it's just 1 inch at a time. And that is about the Zhi. So heart and kidney function together. So that's the mind, the Shen, and the endurance. And there's your David Goggins. Maybe I'll get a David Goggins tattoo.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, you have both too, because there's the one going up,
yeah,
and then there's the one coming down,
yeah,
which is kind of like more of like, I think,
prosperity, right?
Yeah, and reflection and all of that. Like it's just like like you said, they've spawned.
Yep.
And now it can enjoy.
They sit on the couch.
Yes.
And eat some pizza.
Hey, are you somebody who likes to draw? Are you somebody who wants to draw better? Are you someone who tattoos? Are you somebody who wants to tattoo better? Well, then I recommend that you go to our special offer in our show notes of this podcast page. Our website is theapprenticeshipdiaries.com, and on this page you'll find all our listed episodes. Within there, the show notes, there will be a link, TAD 10. Click on there and find yourself 10% off a year's worth of the Reinventing the Tattoo Canon. It will make you better. Well, I mean, and in some kind of sense, we're doing that right now because, like, you're recording a lot of what you know, and like I said in the commercial, whenever I go to you, there's always just so much that I gain from this, and I'm sure our listeners will gain so much because That's the thing, is that like this is all very fascinating. I always want to go through all of this with you whenever we're doing it. I equivocate what John does to me as magic.
Well,
You know, like just it, but you know what you're doing. You know, like you know what you're doing so well, and I'm sure it comes from, which is another question I have. How long have you been doing this?
I think it's 15, 17 years. I guess I started sticking needles in people 17 years ago.
And I remember you gave me a little bit of a run through of that, but I guess if you can share it with people, you didn't start out with acupuncture. You started out with Reiki, right?
Yeah, so this was about 2000, 2001. I lived in Los Angeles for 20 years. And I knew a guy called Colin, who's also from England. And when you're out of the country, you'll sort of gravitate towards your fellow men. And you'll either be immediately rejected or, you know, embraced into the fold. But anyway, he was a good guy, and he wanted to introduce me to everybody. And his sister was in town for a few weeks on vacation. She lives in Cheshire, in England, and he asked me if I wouldn't mind, because he knew I wasn't doing much at the time. Would you mind, showing around? And she's house sitting for a friend, and it's up in the hills, and it's a bit scary. So, maybe you could make sure she's all right. So anyway, I thought, great. I have a philosophy which is I'll always investigate whatever is put in my path. And, if it doesn't work out, you can always walk away. But if it does, it's an opportunity, right? Waiting to be embraced. So she was talking to me about this thing called Reiki energy medicine from Japan. So the system was Dr. Usui. He was a Buddhist monk who created it. Anyway, so she was talking about, I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't even know what energy medicine was. I'd seen, YouTube videos of Qigong and Kung Fu, and, I'd wanted to be like Bruce Lee ever since I was about 7 or 8 years old. Of course, my dad had me do judo, which
that's
is
awesome.
Well, but it's not Kung Fu.
It's not that.
It's not Bruce Lee.
No.
And so, I didn't really say anything because I didn't want to expose my ignorance, but I also didn't really know what she was going on about, but she wouldn't stop. And then so I said, all right, what is it? And she said, well, it's easier for me to show you by practicing on you, and I have to practice anyway because this was a first degree, of which there are 3. And so I said, go on then. And it was amazing. And I couldn't understand what she was doing. She was channeling energy into me, and I could feel my fingers, my palms and my feet, soles of my feet tingling, and I was relaxed, and I felt amazing. I mean, that was a period of my life where I just felt constitutionally restless, irritable, and just off balance, or out of balance. And she did this thing, and I just thought, that's ridiculous. So I said, well, if you want to do some more practicing, I'm here.
Right.
And she did it every day, and it was like an hour each session, and some of the times I just passed out, and I just had no idea what she was doing, but I thought, I want to do this. So I found another guy, and he was another English guy actually, Jeremy Kennedy, who was former, I guess he was a music exec who hit the spiritual path. And he started doing all this Reiki stuff. So I got attuned to the first degree by him. And one day I'm at home and she calls me up and she said, I've just got my 2nd degree. I'm like, oh, not exactly even sure what that's all about, because I'm, brand new in the game and a complete novice. And she said, well, there's something we do called remote healing or distance healing. I'm like, yeah, okay. And she said, what are you doing now? I go, nothing. She says, well, do you want to try it? And I go, sure, absolutely. So, I put my earphones on I had one of those little Ericsson flip phones that I thought was so cool.
They were.
They were. And, it's before that we got the whole smartphone nightmare. And so she said, well, just, listen to me while I'm talking to you and just lie down on the couch or the bed or whatever. Anyway, so she's over I'm in Los Angeles, she's in Cheshire, that's 6,000 plus miles away.
Wow.
And she's doing it in real time. She's working on me doing this energy medicine. It's a modality that I was brand new to. And so she was doing it from a distance while she was talking to me on the phone, and I could feel it the same as I felt it before, only it was stronger.
Wow.
So I felt it in my hands and all over my body. I just feel the energy just, you can feel your energy channels, meridians, and it was amazing. I thought, oh, now I have to do this. So anyway, I got my third degree probably around 2022, which means 2002. So that means I've been doing it for over 20 years now, to the point where I don't even think about it. I thought this was a super hero skill, and that everybody should know about it, and everybody was going to want to do it, and I was going to become rich, and this was going to be my job. And it didn't work out that way. So I was working at Sony Pictures at the time, and I knew a lot of people because where I worked, everybody came through and said hi and everything, and they could come by in their lunch break and whatnot. And it was such a boring job that I decided I was going to learn everybody's names after the first time they came in, and that will surprisingly make you everybody's best friend automatically. You remember their name, remember one thing about them, and then they're like, oh, great, besties.
You're cool.
Yeah. So, and then I go up to them in the commissary and say, do you want to try some Reiki? And they're like, what? So I'd say, well, hold out your hand, and I put their hand between my hands, and they say, can you feel that? Yeah, what's that? It's energy. Well, it's tingling and it's hot. And I go, yeah, that's healing energy. And they're like, okay.
You're like, why is this cool?
Yeah, no but. And then they're like, yeah, anyway, so we were watching Sex and the City last night, and chomp, chomp, chomp. But what about the healing energy? They're not interested. No one's interested. But here you go. And there was one guy called Tom. He worked in the special effects department. He was a good guy, and there's a little segue from him in a sec. But I was talking to him, and he was having a rough time. And I'd heard about what the Reiki could do. So it doesn't have any constraints with time, and it's an energy that it can be focused on anything. And he said that he was sick of his job. He was in a relationship that didn't work, and he was just didn't know what to do. So I said, do you want to come and try some of this Reiki? And he said, I'll try anything, which is the winning answer. Because when someone will try anything, it means that they're open to something without a huge investment in the result. And so they're not going to be disappointed via over expectation. So he came over a few times to where I was living. He lived not far away. I lived in just south of Hollywood. And he came, and we did a few treatments over a period of a couple of months. He got out of his relationship, he got a new job, he got a raise, and he found somebody else that was, more appropriate to invest his time and self into.
Wow.
So that was a good success story with that. And he asked me, he said, I want to say thank you, because I didn't charge him for any of this because he was a guinea pig. And so he said, I said, what do you mean? He said, do you like music? I go, not really. But it's live music. I go, not really. Because I'm a massive introvert. I'd rather be at home alone reading a book.
Right.
And he said, well, I have a friend, I'd like you to meet her. And which immediately scared me to death because, oh dear, one of those situations. And obviously you have to understand that I've been living in Los Angeles for 20 years and I'm covered in tattoos, and my kind of potential partner is the worst possible one. So we're talking about, they work at night on a stage and for money, and it's not presented in a check, it's thrown at them on the stage. Yes. But anyway, and I thought, oh dear, this is probably not going to be good. And I said, well, so what's the name of the band? He says, it's called the Dan Band. Have you heard of the Dan Band?
I feel like I have.
Okay, well, they're on YouTube, and I said, well, can you explain to me what the band is like? And he said, it's best if I just show you? And so once again, the Reiki, the lady said, Corinne, still a good friend of mine, we're still in contact. My original Reiki Eskimo. She said, well, it's best if I show you rather than I tell you. And he did the same thing. So I went to see the Dan Band, and I think I saw them 4 times after that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's the same show every time, but I would take other people, and they would say, so who was this band all about? And I go, just come on.
Gotta come.
Yeah. But anyway, it was hilarious. The band's really good, so I recommend. I don't know if they're still playing, but I think they were guest starring in The Wedding Singer with Adam Sandler.
I feel like I have a poster of them from a client of mine who he does security.
Okay.
I could be wrong. It's a really cool poster. I could be wrong, but it sounds familiar.
Dan is dressed as a gas station attendant, and he has like a rag in his back pocket, which is his designated sweat rag, and he gets girls from the audience to mop his brow. Oh. And he's got 2 backup singers who are dressed like teachers, so they've got those houndstooth jackets with the elbow pads, the big square rimmed glasses.
Teacher glasses.
Yeah. They look, well, my parents were both teachers, and so it doesn't matter where you are in the world, they dress the same.
They dress the same.
Yeah. So, so what they do is they sing diva songs.
Oh.
So Genie in a Bottle, Hold On by Wilson Phillips, what else? Suzanne Vega.
Great.
But they throw in expletives and all this sort of thing, and they got the dance moves, and it's just.
It sounds awesome.
You should go see it.
It sounds awesome.
Well,
They're still playing.
Yeah, if they're still playing.
Yeah.
Well, you can see them on YouTube, captured for posterity. But so anyway, that is how the energy medicine started. So I realized that the Reiki is going to be an impossible sell. And so I thought, well, what can I do to facilitate an in so that people have the opportunity to experience this? And so I thought, well, people can't really visualize the non-material, which is an opener to talk about spiritual stuff. But so I thought, well, but then they see a needle go into them, and suddenly it's all very legitimate. Which of course it is anyway, but you don't have to explain necessarily what the needle is doing. So backtracking just a minute, I talked about the 5 yin organs and the spirits of the yin organs.
Right.
All right, so if I didn't have the organs, which we know are just meat bags, which have a function in your system to, make your body work, and we just talked about the spirits, people their eyes start to glaze over and they lose interest. Well, think about just one needle being able to affect the function of all of these at any one time. And if you know the correct combination of, 360 plus points, right. You're able to affect not one, but potentially all of these. And plus their yang counterparts. So you've got a total of 12 organs to make someone feel better.
Wow.
So, the point of it is that people tend to identify better with something that is physical, touchable, in this term, the needle, rather than, me just putting my hands on someone and doing it. And I don't think about it anymore. I do it with every patient who comes in, and it makes the treatment more effective. And I don't have to explain anything,
yes.
Which is perfect. Because unlike the impression that I might be given right now, my standard operating procedure is not say anything at all.
Yeah.
We'll say very little at least.
Yeah. No, totally. I'm sure. It's an odd thing like that with all of it with people. But I feel like the thing that I've always liked about holistic medicine is that it's very active about how you have to marry your consciousness with it in order for it to have a lot of potency, because you have to actually, it's actionable. You didn't fuck yourself up, in a day. You fucked yourself up over a period of time doing the same things, or a series of same things that got you there. So it was kind of like the same thing my mom used to always say to me, like if I wanted to lose weight, she's like, well, you didn't get fat overnight, so you're not going to get skinny overnight. You're going to have to implore certain things, you're going to have to do certain things to get yourself to where you want to go, and it's going to be a gradual process. And whilst it might not be something that people appreciate, because like you said, they're just overstimulated, they want everything now, and a lot of the overstimulation is what has caused all of this delinquency and fucked upness. If you stop them within like their everyday life and you say, hey, you want to experience Reiki or something like that, they'll experience it. But I think for them to appreciate it as something that it's kind of like spirituality, right? Like you got to kind of be brought to your knees, and you got to be open, and you've got to be humbled within where you are. And if you meet somebody and they're interested, but they're like kind of doing all their own thing, and they're not desperate, or they're not seeking, or they're not, nothing's gonna happen, And I do think you're right with the acupuncture, is that when there's a needle there or something tangible, it's easier to catch somebody into it, because it's like, oh, this pill will help you. If you take this pill, and it could be a placebo.
Right.
But it's just that getting somebody married to that ritual, to that, and then making time for it, and like having them meet you in a space that is kind of centered ground where you're all doing a thing together. It's very odd how that is, but that's what gets somebody back. Or Russell Brand wrote the book on recovery.
Yeah.
You're reatoning to your natural self, or your natural state of being, but that takes kind of a removal from all the rest of it, and kind of meeting in a place where it's just focused.
Well, I agree at 100%. I do like Russell Brand. He speaks very quickly, though.
Yes.
So I like to listen to... So people send me podcasts, and I'll check it to see if I can play it at 1.52x, because I don't want to hear any downtime.
Right.
I don't want to hear any, high noise to signal. No, thank you. I usually listen to stuff in the car, and I drive to my lady friend's, and she's an hour away, and I got to have like a good hour stuff. It's an hour and 43. It's like, might not work.
Because I'm not going to get back to this on my way back.
Yeah, no. And then they'll have like 50 minutes of nothing.
Yeah.
But so people are looking outside of themselves, and this is something that Russell Brand talks about, because he's a big fan of yoga. And sometimes it is necessary that we look outside of ourselves in order to return back inwardly. And so the focus on the needle is the gradual opening to give us the opportunity to come back into ourselves, because the ultimate healer of you is you. And one of the things that I mentioned to people is that, who's the expert on your body? Well, it's you. It's not someone in a white coat. They're just giving their educated opinion. And one of the things that very much bothers me is when I've had people come to me after they've been to a physician and they've been told, you've got so long to live. It's like, well, no, you don't decide that.
No.
That's not your choice to make. And that is the wrong thing to say to somebody who is looking for hope, who is looking for inspiration, who is looking for that opportunity to be led inside themselves, to be healed by themselves.
Right.
So here you go. And this is what I tried to, let's backtrack. Never say try, because what it gives is your subconscious the opportunity to crap out.
Oh.
It's and this is something Goggins is a big fan of too. Don't say try, do it. It doesn't matter what you do it.
So's Yoda.
Yeah. Oh, you said that too.
Oh yeah.
So Yoda got it from Goggins,
no
or
try.
Goggins got it from
do
Yoda?
Or do not. No try. There is no try.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of that. I correct myself repeatedly, as I just did. But so my daughter, there you go. I am introducing her to God and the Bible. Mm-hmm. And I thought I knew about the Bible, having gone to through the British school system. So from 6 to 16, You have assembly every day. We've got prayers, hymn singing, and then you have religious studies, RK, religious knowledge, RI, religious instruction, RS, religious studies. And you look at the Bible and you go through all this stuff. And I thought, I know all about that. And I met this guy called John Richardson, who is he's an artist and he's a musician. And we met through a mutual friend, and he introduced me to the Bible. And he said, he called me on one time. And he said, do you want to meet? And I thought, well, as is my thing, if something is put in my path, I will pursue it until the point where it is no longer pursuable. So I said, yes. And he said, oh, great, buddy. That's, nobody does that anymore. Nobody does that. Nobody meets and talks. So anyway, I went to meet him, and he brought this Bible out. And I thought, oh, here we go.
You're like, it's going to be like this.
And he's like, here we go. I thought it's Jehovah's Witnesses right there sitting at my table. But he said, no, buddy, no. And he showed me some parts of it. He showed me about the Jebusites, the Moabites, the Nephilim, the Anakim, the Rephaim, King Og, the last city of Bashan, and all this stuff. These are giants. And it's not hidden in the Bible. They tell you, like, King Og's bed was 15 feet long. It's like 6 cubits. Wow. So that's 6 times 17 to 20 inches, depending on which cubit you use. There's 6 variations. Anyway, I had to look that up. And then you talk about David and Goliath. So David is a 6-year-old shepherd boy who's very handy with the slingshot. And then Goliath is a Philistine warrior. And he was 6 cubits in a span. So I was like, all right, let's look at that. He's 15 feet or 16 feet thereabouts, because I'm not sure what a span is. Anyway, so if you've ever been down to the Inner Harbour, there's Ripley's Believe It or Not. So my kids used to love going there before they, grew a little old for it. And there's a life-size model of Robert Wadlow. So he was 8 feet and change. So I think over 8.5 feet, right?
Yes. I think it's 8'6".
8'6". So there you go. And there's a picture of him. I don't know if it's there. Maybe there's a dummy of Shaq or a cutout or something.
Just to kind of show you.
Yeah. And I've actually seen Shaq in person. I was at one of those electronics stores, the Good Guys or something, in Brentwood or Century City. I can't remember. And I was with some girlfriend, one of the ones who worked on a stage at night, getting money, not in check form. And of course, that didn't end well. It never does. But we were looking at some sort of device. I mean, this was back in the day where they still had tapes, so who knows. But and I saw this sort of dark shadow pass by me, and I thought, the hell was that? Is it an eclipse? And I turned around, and there was Shaq, and the guy's 7'2", and your brain does. I mean, he's not on the basketball court here. So I've seen Charles Barkley playing live, and he's what, 6'6", 6'8"?
Yeah, he's tall.
But Shaq's even bigger, and he's 7'2". And there you have him, and you see the racks, and you see yourself in comparison to the size of the racks and all the electronics. And then there's this person, and your brain can't take it in. So there's a picture of Shaq, 7'2", next to Robert Wadlow. We're saying 8'6", right? And he looks dwarfed, because he's a foot and 4 inches. Well, Robert Wadlow, who I think he lived to about 21. Yeah. He was 8'6" versus 7'2", and he makes Shaq look like a child.
It's crazy.
So imagine Goliath is nearly twice Robert Wadlow's size, and I'm thinking, this has got to be a mistake. This has got to be nonsense. So I'll read some more stuff. I got the King James Version because it's supposed to be the least muddled with in terms of translation. There's a guy called Ralph Ellis on YouTube. I mean, if you're interested in this, you can definitely spend a lot of time listening to this guy. He's English also, just to let you know.
All right, so I had to stop you to pee. I'm sorry, John.
Oh, that's fine.
You were talking about David and Goliath.
So Ralph Ellis,
yes.
He talks about the King James Version. So I have the PDFs. That means you can do the search function. Mm-hmm. So I look up King Og. So King Og's bedstead, 6 cubits, 15 feet plus minus, right? And so then I see that King Og he lives in a place called Bashan. So I look up Bashan. Bashan's actually in Syria, modern day Syria. And I find there's a book called The Lost City of Bashan. And so I find it, I download it, I read it. This is a city that is made for people who are about 15 or 16 feet tall. The doorways, the stairways, all the rooms, they're designed for giants.
Wow.
And this is in the Bible. So John Richardson, he got my attention very clearly that day. And he started talking about the Nephilim and their, the ritual blood sacrifice and their rampant fornication with, family members, animals, whatever. It's just, their representation of iniquity, the supposed fallen angels and whatnot. And that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But anyway, so I started I wasn't trying. What I did was I started explaining this to my daughter and, had her add up the qubits. and I explained to her about what God could mean. I didn't tell her what it was because I want her to make her own decision even when she sees fit to. And this is when my son was at baseball practice. We were doing some pads and mitts on the side because why should we have to watch baseball, especially when it's practiced by 6-year-olds. And so we practice. She does Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm doing some pad work with her to get her coordination sorted out. And then we take a break. So I started talking about God. Well, what is God? And she said, well, it's the creative force behind everything. I go, great, that's a very good explanation of it because I don't think anyone can say much more than that. And so Friday is the first anniversary of a good friend's death. And in 2019, my best buddy got murdered, shot to death. And he was 31. And he left behind a pregnant wife. And the next year, another good friend died. He had a tumor, and he said he was in his early 50s. And they said, oh, it's just a tumor, we can get it out, it's not a big problem. Died on the operating table. And then 2 years ago, my next best friend, who's psychic, who lived in Los Angeles, and he got food poisoning, then he got a lung infection, and then he got viral meningitis, and then he got kidney failure, and then he coded and he died, all within less than 3 months. And he was in his early 50s as well. And my friend Dan, whose funeral I went back to England to attend last October, was 46. And so you got 5 people, one of whom was 31, one of whom was 46, and the other 2 in their early 50s. And then I said, well, your grandfather, who is today living and breathing and functioning mentally just as well as he was 10 years ago. I mean, he shuffles a bit, but for all intents and purposes, he can do whatever he needs to do. 92. And he's fallen off a horse once, probably about 30 years ago. They said he wasn't going to make it. He lost his memory. It took him 6 months to remember who he was. Wow. And then 2015, we were living in Central America and had to come back because he took another nasty fall. And they said he wasn't going to make it. And they said it's not about if, it's when. He's going to be a vegetable at best. So, it might be good to start getting his affairs in order. So we got him home, fed him up like properly, did acupuncture on him and all that. 92, almost like it never happened. Wow. So I said to my daughter, God takes you when he's ready. It ain't anything that you can do. Mm-hmm. I mean, my friend Brad, he was a gun collector. That was in 2019. He had loads of guns. And he went into a marina warehouse at Lake Saguaro, and I guess his girlfriend had gone to the car, or his wife had gone to the car to go get his wallet to pay for the the boat trip that they just took, because she was on rotation as an emergency doc out of town. So whenever she would come back, he'd organise a date. And she heard some shooting, and that was that.
Wow.
He wasn't even armed. He was just wearing a pair of swim shorts, and that was it.
Right off vacation with an emergency doctor.
Right. And she was the one that she said, I'm the one who can help him. The cops wouldn't let her in there.
Whoa.
Anyway, so, you know, it's all very sad and it's very tragic, but the point of the story is that we don't decide. God decides. And you can... I have another friend, 2019, he was practicing to do an Ironman, I believe. He was a triathlete, pushing himself, in great shape, stopped drinking, eating healthy, didn't stop eating healthy, he was eating healthy. And one night he got a desiccated aorta. So the aorta is a blood vessel that runs down the center of the body. It's a very important vascular canal, and so it just tore open. He bled out and died in the night. So he was in his 40s as well. And so, you know, you can take care of yourself, eat your vegetables, and go to bed early every night, but it's not going to save you when your time is right. So that's not to say, you know, eat pizza every night and get drunk, but
I just pray that I won't say, oh no, or like right before. I don't want to have a revelation about how stupid this is. You know, like I would like it for my death not to be stupid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
That's my whole thing. I was like, God, please, if I could ask one thing, don't make it ridiculous. Like.
Well, how about this? Our generation, we know Elvis Presley, right? We know. I mean,
yeah.
Even growing up, he was a household name.
Yeah.
We died in '76, something like that. And so I showed my daughter a picture of, this is Elvis when he was young, and this is Elvis when he was not so young. So when he was wearing the big white Vegas suit with the sequins and the rhinestones and whatnot, and she said, "Is that the same person?" I go, "Yeah." And I said, "Do you know how he died?" And she said, "No." I go, "He died on the toilet." She said, "Really?" And she comments on it about every time I see her, which is every week. And
there are worse places.
I mean,
but that's pretty personal.
She can't believe it even to this day. He died on the toilet. She'll ask me, "He died? Did Elvis really die on the toilet?" I go, "Yes."
It's perspective.
And I said, "I'm not sure if this part is true, but I think he might have been eating a cheeseburger as well." I'm not sure about that.
That'd be cool. I mean, that's a little less. I mean, maybe it's worse. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It might be better. It might be worse.
We're eating on the toilet, though.
Yeah. There's a movie I saw recently. It's really not good, but it's not bad. It's cute. It's called Puppy Love. And there's this point where it's these two opposite characters, but they're destined to fall in love, obviously, and they're brought together by their dogs, which is so improbable, but they take their dogs like really seriously, and the dogs knock each other up, so they're gonna, you know, the people that own them, they're like, we're gonna be grandparents. But anyway, they don't like each other, at least right off the bat, and you know, the whole time you're like, they're gonna get together. But before they get together, there's this one huge scene of where this guy, he's very OCD, and meticulous and just hyper vigilant of like germs and all of this. And he like walls out on her, and he's like, "I found your empty cereal bowl in the bathroom. Who the hell eats cereal in the bathroom? Who eats anything in the bathroom?" And I was like, I might have done it.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I count my immune system being really good as a result of it.
Yeah.
It's like eating, you know, like you know, getting kissed by your dog or like, you know, whatever. It's just being like, I grew up in around farm country and stuff. I'm just kind of a little less, I don't know, we're more comfortable with dirt.
Right, no, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good thing. I mean, they say, you know, you get helicopter parents following their kids around with hand sanitizer, and there's, you know, I think 7 ingredients in hand sanitizer which are either carcinogenic or, you know, contribute to gene mutation or something like that.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. I've been using a lot more of it since COVID, and I feel like my body is, I mean, you've been working on me a lot since then. I feel like my organs have been a lot more stressed out since all of that, but there were so many things that happened. Oh, man. I'm sure you guys are just on the edge of your seat waiting, straining to hear, because I know the audio was super exceptional by the end. But I know you're all wondering what hand sanitizer has done to my body. And you know what? If you come back next week, it isn't over yet. Nobody's taking us out. We're not eating hamburgers on the toilet seat here. It all can continue next week, and it does with John next week for part 2 of our time. And this is a good time to note that I titled this episode kind of as a pivot off of the 2 sleeves that he has, one of which that I helped him flesh out and get ready. But he has the full journey of the koi on both sides of his body. So I guess you can kind of ferret out what next week is going to be called. I don't know. Maybe it's not that clear, but I thought it was kind of fun. The other thing is that John's so amazing that I wanted to highlight him specifically because the release time of when you guys are going to hear this is not as powerful as when it happened, because John was so gracious, and that's just how he is, to remember what day it was. It was September 11th when we recorded this particular podcast, and he did such a beautiful sign out next week that I wanted to just preemptively shout that out because he remembered and I did not. And that just kind of shows you what kind of healing power he has, an ability to, I don't know, just recognize so much outside of himself. And he's just a beautiful person. So with all that being said, I am very grateful for all of you who have tuned in this week. Again, I hope I catch you next week. But in the meantime, God bless. Have an awesome, powerful week where you make a lot happen. And I'll catch you next week. Love y'all. Bye.
Thanks for listening. You can find the Apprenticeship Diaries on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our IG is _apprenticeship_diary. If you would like to offer constructive criticism or an interview, drop us an email at theapprenticeshipdiaries@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from our listeners.